All right, now in this next section, we're going to hear just a little bit of like what would the other side say to some of these Kamala policies if they had a chance and it wasn't the DNC's week to have a sounding board. So we're going to hear Kamala Harris is a threat to our democracy, and it's a speech by Tulsi Gabbard. And we're also going to see what happens when the left and right might sit down together. What would that look like? Picture Kamala sitting down with Trump and talking, and we have world peace at the end of that conversation if they did it right. We have from our friend JP Sears, he's going to show us what that would look like. He's got like a little mock-up of how that might go down, not with Trump and Kamala, but just with red team and blue team in general. And let's get to that block, because I want to hear what Tulsi has to say recently about Kamala, because she's famous for taking Kamala kind of out of the race a couple years ago. So let's see what's happening this week.
We often hear these words in the Declaration of Independence, probably not often enough, but life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words are too often taken for granted. And now you've heard from many different leaders who are champions of liberty. You're going to hear from my friend Chip Roy here soon, talking about the great work that he's doing in Congress. But you hear too much lip service from a lot of these politicians. And they'll talk about liberty and then they'll vote against liberty. I realized today as I got here, landed here this afternoon, I hadn't gone and looked at the book definition, the dictionary definition of liberty recently. It's a good reminder. It is the condition of being free from confinement, servitude, or forced labor. It is the condition of being free from oppressive restriction or control by a government or other power. It is a right to engage in certain actions without control or interference by a government or other power. Words are powerful, and they mean things. And right now in this election, as you very well know, there is nothing short of freedom and liberty on the line. We can look through the laundry list of examples of how increasingly our government is becoming more and more tyrannical and taking more and more of our freedom away. Oftentimes it is cloaked in, well, we have to do this in order to keep you safe, or we have to do this because we know what's best for you. But even now we are seeing that they're not even making excuses anymore. The brazen abuse of power and power grabs that are ongoing. We look at the last 4 years under the Biden-Harris administration, and I thought, as I look through all these examples, and I talk about them very often so that we are reminded of the truth about what's really going on. How many of you saw Kamala Harris's first ad? Her latest campaign ad? A few of you. So for those of you who haven't seen it, for those of you who haven't seen it, the two words that she is using in that ad and that you will continue to hear for the next 3 months is freedom and our future.
Coconut tree.
She is promising to be a president who will champion our freedom and who will bring about a bright future. Don't forget this, because you know the power. We're already seeing the big propaganda media machine in full speed. They are trying to revise history and trying to create this image of Kamala Harris that is not based on reality. And she is using these words very intentionally, that she will fight for our freedom and our future. Know this, because you guys are the soldiers who are out on the streets, who are the truth tellers. And this is what we are going to be confronted with on every front. And the best way to combat their propaganda is with courageous and strong voices of truth. The irony and the hypocrisy is so rich here because, again, she will say these words that are powerful words that have a powerful meaning to all of us as Americans and to those of us who have volunteered to serve our country. When we take that oath to support and defend the Constitution, it means something in a visceral way. So it is rich to hear these words coming from a person who was charged with the serious task of securing our borders, lied to us for the last 3 years, telling us the borders are secure. Shouldn't even have to go to the border because there's nothing going on there. She's all. And so what are they saying now about the border? Oh, that was never her job at all. This is coming from someone who outright rejects the Constitution. If you remember when she was a senator on the Judiciary Committee, she was questioning one of Trump's judicial nominees, Brian Boucher, and opposing him and attacking him because he had the audacity to be a devout Catholic and a member of the Knights of Columbus. That disqualified him in her view. She should read the Constitution, perhaps, and take a look at what Article 6 says, that there shall be no religious test. As she touts freedom, she does not believe in free speech, and she stood right alongside Joe Biden in calling for standing up our modern-day Ministry of Truth to tell us what we are allowed to see, what we are allowed to say, and what information we must be protected from because a woman who does the Mary Poppins dance says it is so. This is coming from a person who talks about freedom and our futures, is also a person who not only doesn't believe in our Second Amendment rights, has said over and over and over again how committed she is to taking away our guns. She doesn't believe, she touts being a prosecutor president and that she's tough on crime, but she doesn't believe in our right to defend ourselves and our loved ones. She doesn't believe in the right our founders gave us with the specific intent of recognizing that it's up to us to stand up against the abuse of power of a tyrannical government. She doesn't believe in our civil liberties and our fundamental right to privacy, our right to be protected from warrantless search and seizure by our own government, joining with Republicans and Democrats in Congress over and over and over again to extend and expand things like the secret FISA court and our government's authorities to violate our Fourth Amendment rights. She is someone who doesn't believe in the rule of law, fairness, and justice. And for those of you who watched my debate with her in 2019, she claims to stand for criminal justice reform and true justice and equality for all, and yet she fought hard to prevent DNA evidence from being presented to a judge that would have exonerated an innocent man who was sitting on death row. And you heard Sean talk about this earlier, and many others. She rejects the right of parents to raise their own children. Rejecting the right to say, hey, I know what kind of education is best for my child. I should have the freedom and right to say that and to make that decision for ourselves. Fundamentally, when you look at what is the through line through all of these examples, and there are many more, fundamentally at its core, and this is one of the main reasons why I left the Democrat Party, because she's not alone in this, is they reject freedom. They reject freedom. And that is what's at the heart of this. They believe that they know what's best for us more than we do, and that they and they alone should be the authority that can dictate to us how we must live our lives, what we're allowed to think and read and say and believe. By rejecting freedom, they reject our Constitution and must not be allowed to be in power. So we have our work cut out for us. These next 90 or so days are going to be tough. The propaganda machines are already working overtime. I saw a post yesterday that someone sent me that MSNBC had up for a little while, taking clips from a Joe Rogan conversation with Michael Malice and splicing it together to make it sound like Joe Rogan was endorsing Kamala Harris to be president, number one. But the funny thing was that the splicing of words that they took, I posted this on my social media if you want to take a look, because it really made me laugh. They took things that Joe said about me and made it sound like he said them about her, to include, hey, she deployed to Iraq 2 times. She served in a medical unit. She has seen the cost of war. The brazen propaganda, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We got to know what we're up against, because we have to be the strong and courageous voice of truth. We're up against the big propaganda media. We're up against big tech. We've seen how the algorithms are already working hard to both try to erase the fact that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. And they're trying to erase Kamala Harris's egregious record of every single public office that she has held, and doing everything they can to bolster this new narrative and this new persona that they're pushing, working hand in glove with the Democrat elite.
Coup number 2.
I don't know what that means. I'm going to say no comment on that one. But here's the thing. A lot of people have been saying, okay, well, look, the Democrats just launched this coup, and they took out Joe Biden, and they put in Kamala Harris, and Democrats didn't really even get a say in it. Apparently today in a virtual meeting, some of them did. But the thing is, you look back to 2016. I was a vice chair of the DNC back then. I left that position as I saw they were rigging that Democratic primary for Hillary Clinton. Fast forward to 2020, Democratic primary. I was in that Democratic primary and experienced firsthand about how they worked hand in glove with the big mainstream media to pick and choose which candidates they wanted you as voters to be exposed to, what they wanted you to know. And for the rest of us, they did their very best to smear and destroy, undermine credibility, black out, and completely cancel, so that people would say, oh, you're running for president, I've never heard of you. The examples are great about how serious the powers are who are launching all that they possibly can against us and against our freedom. It's discouraging, honestly, because I hear from a lot of people who express how hopeless they feel in this moment. That the powers seem so dark and so great. How do we lift our voices and break through the noise? Here tonight, when I got here, I talked to a few people asking, how do we break through? How do we, just little old American people, how do we break through this gridlock of noise and power and propaganda that is being thrown at us? By standing together, recognizing that while we may not agree on every issue, we come together around our foundation, our core, this foundation of liberty and freedom, and recognize that we forget sometimes our founding fathers had some pretty fierce and strong disagreements with each other. And they battled it out in private and in public. Some of them absolutely hated each other. But ultimately, what did they do? They recognized the imperative of that moment in time and the mission, the no-fail mission they had before them. Well, we are facing a no-fail mission today. We cannot afford to fail. We cannot afford to stand on the sidelines and think, okay, well, somebody else is going to go out there and make this happen. We can't afford to sit back and say, hey, good for you. I'm glad you're running for office. I'm going to stay at home. Good job. Keep up the good work. It is going to require every single one of us Whatever your party affiliation may be, whatever your feelings on one issue or another, or how do we solve this challenge or that challenge, the reality is that unless we stand up and defend freedom today, we won't have a vibrant open marketplace of ideas where we can debate how we best tackle and solve the challenges we face in healthcare or in housing or the role of government as a whole. We will not be able to have these debates unless we live in a truly free society. So we have to be vigilant. We've already seen over these last 3.5 years how divisive it has become, the brazenness of the abuse of power. Be vigilant and stand strong and be tireless in our defense of freedom. There's a quote that I want to share with you that was quite jarring to me when I read it. And it's a quote from President Lincoln that he delivered on January 27th of 1838 in a speech to the Young Men's Lyceum of Springfield, Illinois. He said, quote, "At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." That is the seriousness of where we are as Americans and as a country. Those who are in power in our country today are leading us and our great nation towards this suicide that Abraham Lincoln warned against. This threat to our freedom and our liberty is coming from within. And if we don't take action, then we will look back on this moment when it's too late with regret, but we won't be able to say that we weren't warned, that we didn't see it coming. There are many people throughout our nation's history who have sacrificed everything in defense of our freedom, in defense of our liberty. And so I encourage you to remember them. I know people, I've served with people who I carry in my heart on those days where you might feel a little bit tired, on those days where the attacks are kind of strong, not being deterred when people call you names, or even when people close to you challenge you or criticize you. Or maybe they stop talking to you altogether simply because you are living up to your responsibility, our responsibility as Americans to be defenders of freedom and liberty. Stand strong. It's going to take hard work, a lot of door knocking, phone calls, social media, going out and doing the good work of rising above the noise and the name calling and standing strong and proud with aloha for freedom and liberty now and forever. Thank you all so much. It's so great to see you. Keep up the great work.
So, the election's heating up. Yeah, sure is. Who are you gonna vote for? Trump. I hope you die. That's so loving of you. I assume you're voting for Kamala. How'd you know? Just call it a lucky guess. So I'm wondering, why are you voting for Kamala? Because I hate Trump. He's a fascist. If he ever gets into office, he'll take away our rights, lock up his political rivals, and he'll never leave office. Did you know he was in office and he didn't do any of those things? That has nothing to do with anything in this situation. Of course not. But I understand, based on what you've been told to believe about Trump, that you don't want to vote for him. But I'm also wondering, what makes you want to vote for Kamala? I don't know. There's just so many reasons. Like, For all the reasons. Well, you don't have to name all the reasons, but I'd love to know just about one of them. Well, like, she'll bring change. Could you be just a little more specific? She'll change everything. Okay. Yeah, if she gets into office, she'll change everything. Gosh darn it, it would be amazing. She's already in office. No, she's not. But you can expect big things coming from her. But like, what's Trump gonna do if he gets into office? Aside from take away our rights to nose piercings and blue hair? Yeah, I don't think he'd do that. But one of his policies that he would implement is securing the border. I hate that. Immigrants helped make America what it is, and Trump just wants to close the border. Immigrants should have a legal process to get into America. Yeah, that's actually what Trump would provide, the opportunity to follow a legal process to get into this country. Right now, the borders are just has a border wide open so anyone, including murderers, terrorists, and human traffickers, can just walk right in. I don't think that's what Trump means by the words he says. He just wants to build a wall to keep everybody out and then, like a lunatic, require people to show an ID to vote. Fascist. Oh, on a different note, I just saw the Democrats at the DNC have built a wall around the convention and require an ID in order to get in. Well, that's just good security. Yeah, I agree. And are there like other specific policies that Kamala has that make you want to vote for her? Yeah, I just thought of a very specific one. I'd love to hear it. And this is a big one of hers. She wants to unburden what has been by what can be. Did you know that's actually a communist saying taken right out of Marxist writings? She's not a communist, idiot. She's a Democrat. Can you name just one thing that Kamala wants to do that's not a communist policy? Yeah. Unlike Trump, who's all about giving people equal opportunity, gross, Kamala knows that we don't all start in the same place, so she's all about giving people equity, which means we all end up in the same place. That's very pure communism. You couldn't be more mistaken. You Trump supporters are so uneducated. But here's another one. She wants to give free driver's license, free healthcare, and free college to illegal immigrants. I like that. Trump definitely wouldn't do that. Yeah, like he'd probably only want to give those things for free to American citizens. No, he wouldn't. Ew, that's even worse. Like, why not? Because that would be communism too. No, I don't think it is. You just don't understand Kamala, who is black. She just wants people to be joyful. That's why strength through joy is her campaign theme. Well, at least that's not communism. Thank you. It's actually Nazism. What? Yeah, Strength Through Joy was actually an organization set up by the Nazis in order to trick people into supporting them and their horrible cause. I mean, I think it actually sounds pretty good. Like, is there a better place to get strength than through joy? Ability? You're just an ableist. Sure. What do you think Kamala will do about inflation? Fix it. How? By unburdening it by what can be. What would Trump do to fix it? Reduce it by implementing business strategies that he's very well versed in, including the principal driver of inflation, which is government spending. Well, what would Trump do about the Ukraine war? Ended on day one. What would Kamala do about it, do you think? Well, she would support it so it can continue by funding Ukraine through even more government spending. Two birds, one stone right there. Exactly. Both those birds are America. I don't understand analogies. Your mind works like a three-legged chair. Thank you. I'd love to learn what you think about Tim Walz. Love the guy. I mean, tampons in boys' restrooms, and he served his country in the military. What do you think about J.D. Vance? Weird, right? Well, I like that he served our country too, but didn't abandon his military unit before being deployed. Iraq probably just didn't feel like a safe space to him, so I think him taking the coward's way out was very brave. Well, I see it differently. And, we need Kamala because if Trump gets elected, we're going to have a civil war because literally 0 people like him. I think if it gets stolen from him, we're going to have a civil war. Yeah, it sounds like we'll probably have a civil war no matter what. Hey, that's one thing we agree on. I think the civil war would be a long, hard-fought battle. Yeah, my side is very pro-gun and your side is very anti-gun. I wonder who's going to win. Can't wait to find out.
Can't wait to find out. What a great punchline. I'm sure it would be, just a game of checkers, and everybody would see who the winner was, right? There wouldn't need to be violence between people in this country because of disagreements between red team, blue team, would there? Or wait, there is a history of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one saying that she could adopt that would really help her constituency would be like, work will set you free. People, come on. Like, get up off the couch.
Arbeit macht frei.
Forget the welfare and get to work. Come on.
Yeah, it was right over the labor camps in Germany in World War II. So it wasn't communism, it was Nazism. Interestingly, let me go over here. My book cam's out. I'll have to show you later. I'm going to show you like this. I'm going to fix it. But have you ever heard of this book?
Nope.
All right. In this book, so JFK had a really interesting history before he was president. I was doing some research last week, and he ended up publishing a paper which got made into this book. The paper, Why England Slept, was written, it was about like German pacification and these sort of things, isolationist tendencies in World War II, build up. It was 1939. So JFK is 18 years old. He takes a whole tour of Europe and like to be Soviet Union area. So he has this amazing tour. Why? Because his dad is Ambassador Joe Kennedy, ambassador to UK. And he's at St. James's Court, and young JFK and Joe Jr., who later gets killed in Operation Aphrodite in 1943, they get to see how government actually works, right? So you're going to see your dad, he's doing statecraft, and he goes and he writes this paper in support of the Anglo-American establishment, which is why I got this book, because this is like the story of his position. And if at some point in JFK's career, he differed with the goals of the Anglo-American establishment, let's maybe say he disagreed with that, I would think they would cut him out of the picture in the most severe way. And when you look at his assassination, beyond the official story, you have the mob layer, the CIA layer, the MI6 layer, and the Israel layer. Those are kind of MI6 and Mossad and CIA later, all very much connected. So it's an interesting foreshadowing of maybe what would, that would put him on a stage. If he supports their goal, you could become president. You're their guy. But if while you're president, you don't stand up for their goal, they might also make you a target. And I also want to I have to fix the book cam first before I can shout out these other books over here. But that's interesting. And just the fact that he had like that whole tour of Europe, what a different perspective he would have. And he did that, by the way, for like his Harvard thesis. So other kids go to the library. JFK like went on a mini world tour to go get firsthand information. And maybe that's why he later becomes qualified to be president after his older brother dies tragically in a British Army Air Force type accident back in the day. But that's just history.
Yeah, that's interesting.
History.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So you watched the DNC this past week.
I did. Yeah. So, I was just going to check in a little bit. I couldn't have just watched it like without any sort of like basically I wanted to watch somebody else watching it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I was watching a little bit of like the InfoWars coverage, and I heard that Mr. Fuentes was doing a wall-to-wall coverage of it. I'm like, that should be hilarious. So I checked in on that, and it didn't disappoint. It was really funny watching him watch it and his takes on it. Like there was like the one part I was cracking up. There was this one part where they were like, and he even some lady was on the stage like, and talking about Trump. Like Trump even had a white supremacist dinner guest at Mar-a-Lago, and Nick was like, "That's me."
Well, it could have also been Kanye.
Oh yeah, could have been. Yeah, could have been. Yeah, exactly. But then that turned to like this big meme. The dinner guest, you guys. The dinner guest is here. It was so funny, dude. It was cracking me up. So it was that. So it was entertaining, and but just on its face too. But it was, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But like especially that first night, it was not a typical Democrat convention. Like there was
No, they kept
there
Joe
was
Biden up to 11 o'clock before they let him start.
well, I mean, not only that, but like it was no woke. There was like no woke. Like there was like no like crazy in your face woke stuff. Like dancing naked trannies or anything like that. I was expecting like the full parade.
There is
But
some stuff outside. We do have some clips that would illustrate some
okay.
of the
Yeah,
foreshadowing of the event.
but dude, it
you
was
know?
like country. It was like country music and American flags. I was like, what in the hell is going on here, man?
Well,
Yeah.
if you saw the Republican convention,
Yeah.
the production value of it was off the hook. So they had like James Taylor booked, but he couldn't play because they were running behind on time. And then they had like, they were supposed to be like Beyonce and Taylor Swift showing up, but they didn't. And they kind of like bait and switch their entire audience to make them think like these big celebrities were showing up. And then it was just Kamala. Kamala is the celebrity. No other celebrity could hold the stage with Kamala, is how they framed it when, they gave her the Heisman. And they're like, we're not coming to your event, So
Wow.
that's interesting. I didn't watch Kamala's speech on Thursday. I didn't watch Biden's speech on Monday because I was busy last week, but I did watch Wednesday night, which is like the big run up to it, right? And I think that's when they had Barack and Michelle, and AOC was probably that night. So what I heard was, first off, if you're a Democrat and you're in that audience, first off, I feel for you, but I also understand and I empathize why you would believe what they're saying on stage, because if you don't know anything outside of the official narrative, what they say kind of makes sense, but it is always at the occlusion of information that exists. It's always at the censorship and separation of other evidence that exists. They're painting a caricature that if you look outside the frame of reference whatsoever, it doesn't hold up. It shatters. But their audience never goes outside and they get gaslit hard to stay inside. So I watched the Republican convention with the same kind of critical eye as I was watching this one, because, I see that the machinations don't really add up to the marketing on the box. It's like one vote, one person. That's not how this country works. Those people buy those politicians, and there's a lot of ruse going on there. So anyway, I try to watch it objectively. In this case, I mean, the gaslighting's off the hook, and only a certain group of people are going to sit there and take it and not be like, hey, what about this? And not question their way out of it. And so I think there is a segment of the population that's not going to question their way out of much. And they do collect around events like this. So we're going to see. I'm sure there's some smart people that are over there and they're just misinformed, but there's also people that don't know any better. And that is the core audience of what you're about to see at the Democratic National Convention. Again, August Belmont back in the 1800s, right around the time of the Civil War. And as a matter of fact, August Belmont was in charge of the Democratic National Convention, and he's the chairman of the DNC, and he's the Rothschild international banking family representative in America. And they were running our politics straight up, and they were the politicians and the financial supporters of the Confederacy and slavery who benefited from the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And so I don't want to see that type of history repeat, because those things have gone on in history, and 100 and some years ago isn't really that long ago when you're talking about multi-generational cults of people who love power and they're willing to pervert people in order to achieve, maintain, and retain that power. Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.